Here we go. Let's play ball on 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. Travis Thomas here with my main man, JP Ricciardi, who I was just telling off camera, I'm already a fan of yours. This is our first time working together. We're obviously going to get into the drama that is Rafael Devers this weekend as the Sox take on the Giants in the Bay. But I want to set the table here with a little getting to know you between you and I, my friend. Your resume is impeccable. Local kid, grew up around here, worked for the Giants front office, worked for Billy Beane. You know, I have Moneyball questions. I got it all. We see you all the time on Ness and broadcasting the Woo Sox games. You do a great job, my friend. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, would you?
Well, I appreciate that nice introduction, Travis, and it's going to be nice getting to know you as well. Very simple. I've been a lifelong baseballer. You know, I started from, like all of us, you know, playing in high school, played in college, played in the minor leagues, and then made a career out of it. But It's been a good run. It's been a good way to make a living, and it's been very enjoyable and nice to look back now and see how things are playing out with the game as it is present.
No doubt. Let's take a trip down memory lane before we get to Raffy. Tell me everything about Billy Beane. Is it everything I've dreamed of? Because I admired that guy for so many years.
Well, Billy and I played together in the minor leagues, so we go back a long way. I was actually in his wedding party, so that's how well I know Billy. Billy was probably the best guy I ever worked with because Billy, he actually got me as an evaluator, and he trusted me. But more importantly, Billy was a little bit of a gunslinger, not afraid to take chances. And I think that's why Billy had a lot of success because he wasn't afraid to go against the norm. And you know, obviously in Oakland, and I was there 16 years. And when I first got there, we were terrible. We had no money. And the Haas family owned us. And then they started putting money into the team. We ended up being really good. We went to 3 World Series in a row. Then the Haas family sold, and it was taken over by a different group, and they didn't want to spend any money. So that was kind of the impetus of Moneyball, where we had to find players with no money. And it was just, honestly, it was great working with Billy. It was great. Obviously, our friendship went a long way, but I got a million Billy Beane stories. I got a million stories of just putting a team together with him and how much fun it was. So to me, I'll always have a special place for Billy as a dear friend, but more as a baseball guy as well.
Hey, brother, you're already making my dreams come true. You're basically telling me that Moneyball was very realistic, and that's how Billy Beane was. Brad Pitt, of course, famously played the role, did a great job. So, and by the way, hearing you talk too, it's so funny how putting resources into your team does equal results. Like, I don't want to act like this stuff, you know, is easy, because it's not, but it's also not rocket science, JP. Like, if you want to be a contender, you have to pour those resources into your team, right?
Well, I think in any sport, as you can relate to, the team with the talent wins. And how do you acquire talent? So at the major league level, we're paid to win.
Right.
And now some teams have more resources than others. But I always use the analogy. I think of Mike Krzyzewski. If he's at Duke, he can get in every McDonald's All-American house. He's not going to Northeastern University and all of a sudden saying, I'm so smart and my process is so good that I'm all of a sudden going to be fighting for national championships at Northeastern.
Yes.
He needs talent, and he's got access to talent. And I don't think anybody who has access to talent, the Yankees, the Dodgers, these other teams, should apologize for having access to talent.
All right, JP, let's get into it, because this Red Sox team has talent. And they had one hell of a talented player in Rafael Devers for a long time. But in the end, we saw it was about me, I, instead of we, us. And the Red Sox, hey, maybe it is addition by subtraction in terms of getting that mentality out of the clubhouse. I think they have a bunch of guys who care about each other now. I think they're a more cohesive unit, a team now, as it were. Do you see it that way with Rafael Devers now in the Bay? By the way, JP, the guy's there 5 minutes, bro. And he's already like, oh, I'll play first base, I'll do DH, whatever you need. You need me to work concessions, I'll do it. Where was that energy here, JP, is what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, you make a good point, and I think it's a little bit more complex than the general public is probably aware of. But I think it comes down to this. He was a very good player. He's still a very good player.
Yes.
And trade for trade, I think the Giants won the trade. If you want to if I put on my evaluation hat, that's how I look at it. But when I took my GM hat on and I look at the big scope, I have to give the Red Sox a lot of credit because it's hard to get rid of your best player, especially when you're fighting for a playoff spot. But they know the player and the environment better than we do. And he must have been so detrimental to what they were trying to do and the environment that they were trying to create that they thought that this was going to be addition by subtraction. And I also think that they got a team to step up to take all the money. So they were able to get rid of what they considered a problem and get rid of the resources and probably allocate it, hopefully at the trade deadline or going into next year. So being there, you have a little better perspective of what's going on. But the more I see, the more I hear, I think that this player's wore out his welcome in Boston.
Take us behind the curtain, too. Obviously this is a Red Sox show, but I do look at things from the Giants aspect. And you said they won the trade in terms of the players, right? And we understand that. But I also look at the Giants, and I see leadership. I know Chapman's hurt right now, but that's a leader. Logan Webb, a guy that's been there a long time. Justin Verlander, old man River, okay? And not playing well, but a leader, a walking encapsulation of a leader. I think a lot of this stuff with Rappy is not only did they pick up the contract, JP, but he doesn't have to lead there. He can just be productive. He can just go in and swing the bat, play first or DH, wherever the hell they're going to put him. He doesn't have to try and lead a youth movement like what we see here in Boston, outside of an Alex Bregman, of course.
Well, and I think the missing part to that equation is Buster Posey.
Yeah.
So you've got a future Hall of Fame player that's now running the Giants.
Right.
Now, I can tell you this, having been with the Giants, the last 3 to 4 years, this trade would have never happened because the front office would have never wanted to take this kind of deal on and never want to take this money on. But now you got a baseball guy who totally changed the culture in San Francisco. The culture was very poor before. He's created a baseball culture with baseball people. He's getting input from baseball people, from his scouting director, from his farm director, from all the people that are around him. He's making an inclusive unit, and he's doing what's best for the San Francisco Giants. And if you go look at his tenure, when Brian Sabean, who I think was one of the greatest GMs who ever was a GM in our game and is a future Hall of Famer, when Brian Sabean was the GM there and Posey was there, he was drafted under Sabean, and Posey got to see the Giants go out and spend money and acquire players, and the main goal was to win. So he was part of 3 World Championship teams. He knows you need star players to win. And I also think when Buster Posey speaks to Rafael Devers, there's going to be a respect right off the bat as to who Devers is talking to. And I think when Buster Posey comes to you and says, hey, would you be willing to play first base because of this, this, and this? I think there's going to be a little different level of respect, especially Devers knows his image has been hit a little bit. He's got to start off on the right foot. And I actually saw him taking ground balls at first base the other day, and I was not surprised because I do believe he'll play first base before this year's out.
Yeah, I think he might play it this weekend just to spite the damn Sox. Let's bring it back to the Sox here. Look, if I'm on that team, JP, I'm ticked off. I watched that introductory press conference of Rafael Devers sitting there all smiles. He was just cheesing, having a good old time. I'm happy to be here wherever they need me. Look, it's one thing for loudmouths like me in the media to have an opinion and a hot take. But if I played alongside this guy and sweat and bled with him in that clubhouse, and I see that, I am ticked off. Am I reading too much into this? In other words, do you think the Sox could have a chip on their shoulder from how he acted and how he ran himself out of town, JP?
I think just going back to, he's a new face in a new place.
Yeah.
He's got to get off on a good start from a teammate standpoint, so to speak, because obviously his reputation took a little bit of a hit. And, it's a very small game, baseball, and reputations get out there and opinions of players get out there. And you don't really know a guy until you get a guy.
Yeah.
But obviously he's on his best behavior, and it takes time. I really will do the evaluation of where he fits in with the Giants once he gets settled in and once he gets comfortable.
Okay.
He made a really good point. He doesn't have to be a leader there. They have some guys that are leaders there. So he could kind of just settle in and be Rafael Devers, the really good offensive player that he is. And, listen, in a lot of ways, I think this is a win-win for both sides. I think the Red Sox got rid of the money. They got rid of a player that they weren't happy with as far as attitude-wise, and the Giants took on a good player. So, it might be addition by subtraction for Boston.
Well, as you can imagine, JP, the fans have a lot of opinions on this. So we'll actually get to that now because we have a hotline, 617-790-0928. Call us. Let us know how you feel about Devers taking on the Sox this weekend out in the Bay. Pauline in Vermont gave us a call. Let's take a listen, JP. We'll react on the other side.
Yes. Hi, this is Polly calling from Burlington, Vermont. I'd like to know why it took the powers that be so long to say bye-bye to Devers. He was batting poorly on purpose. He was simply showing up for the paycheck. Thank goodness we don't have to genuflect when he shows up anymore. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Brother, you're the perfect person to ask this. Because, listen, I mean, we talk about the production with him, and we get all that. But I'm actually in lockstep with the caller here. He came in spring training when this started, when Bregman gets signed. And he's like, yeah, I'm not playing first. I'm not DHing. I mean, he told you, credit to Rafi, he was consistent. He told you in spring training what he wasn't going to do. And the Sox, kudos to them, too. They tried to make it work, JP. It just wasn't going to work. Could they have traded him in spring training, looking back on it, hindsight being what it is?
I don't think he could have been moved in spring training because I think most teams have their roster set. They have their budget set. So they're probably not in a position to make that type of move. I think in Pauline's question, I think one of the things that we have to be realistic here. This is one of the top 10 hitters in baseball.
Yes.
You can say whatever you want to say, but the numbers don't lie. My problem is this. If you have a very good player and he comes in and he plays hard, does what he's supposed to do, and is not the best teammate in the clubhouse and is not the best teammate outside, I can swallow that.
Yeah.
What I can't swallow is when you're a good player and you're not doing the things you're supposed to do on the field and you're just trying to let your numbers speak for themselves, because then you have a problem. So I can put up with a bad hombre, but I can't put up with a bad hombre on the field and in the clubhouse. So sometimes you have to look the other way in professional sports because, listen, we just mentioned it. He's one of the top 10 hitters in baseball.
He is.
Go fall off a tree. Go find him. But what's the price?
That's right. That's right. The calls kept coming, by the way, 617-790-0928 if you want to get involved here. Coach Cassidy in New Hampshire had some thoughts as well. Take a listen, JP.
And for Devers, it's a blessing in disguise for him. I remember a kid I used to play Little League for me in Concord, New Hampshire, was a GM for the Giants back in 2010, 2012, and 2014 when the Giants won the World Series all those 3 years. His name was Brian Sabian. He started out with the Yankees, went to the Giants, and did quite well. Anyway, that's all I have to say. It's a great show, and I'm hooked on it right now. Whether you go to the chat or Karen Reed, there's no choice. Got to go with the chat. Okay.
Coach Cassidy took us every place there, JP. I mean, Little League to the show. I didn't know what was going on, but thanks for the call.
Well, the funny thing is, Brian Sabian was my assistant coach in college.
Wow.
So I go way back with Brian Sabian. I know him really well, and I agree with Coach Cassidy. He is a future Hall of Famer as a general manager, and he did a great job in San Francisco. 3 World Series. I mean, that's pretty tough to top.
Those results speak for themselves. It's a small world after all here on 310 to Left. We learn something new every day. 6 degrees of separation with my man JP and Coach Cassidy calling in. 1 minute left here. JP, do you think it'll be sort of strange for these Red Sox players to go against a Rafael Devers? Like when they look on the other side and they see him going against the Red Sox, is that strange for them, or is that just fodder for us in the media to talk about? The players could care less.
I think the veterans, no problem. They've been through it. I think it's going to be interesting to see like Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony and some of the young guys like, wow, this guy was just with us in the clubhouse competing with us a week ago, and now he's on the other side. So I think the big leagues and the reality of the big leagues is hitting some of the young kids, and they're realizing, whoa, it's a whole different game up here.
Yeah, no doubt. I am curious to see that too, especially the young players, as you said. But I also think in the same way the Red Sox were thinking, let's get Rafi out of this clubhouse in terms of the culture so we don't mess it up for the young guys. I also think it's a learning experience. I mean, kind of a cautionary tale, right? Like, you can make
reality.
Yeah, it's the reality of the business. You can make all the money in the world, but in the end, you're still not bigger than the brand. And this is a team sport, right, JP?
I'll tell you what, T. I'll tell you what I'd like to be. I'd like to be in the pitchers meeting. I'd love to hear how they're going to go attack Rafael Devers and see what the pitch sequence is going to be and what their thoughts are about approaching him as an opponent now.
Well, you know what, my friend? Let's do that when we come back here on 310 to Left, because we're talking Rappy, but we haven't really talked the series yet. There is a series to play against these guys, and have you heard the Sox have been hot lately? We'll do that next on 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers. Stay with us. Welcome back to 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers. All right, JP, we're breaking this down. We've talked all the drama surrounding Rafael Devers and the Red Sox this weekend as they take on the Giants in the Bay. But now we got to get into the nuts and bolts of the actual series here. Look, I'm going to tell you what I think about the series coming into it. This feels like a litmus test kind of moment for the Sox. We know they've been playing better as of late. We know they cleaned up a lot of those errors, especially late in these games. The pitching is held up for the most part. Even if, a Giolito or a Buehler give you a bad outing, they own it in the postgame, and then that next start, they're a little bit better. Bello's getting better. Crochet's he's a war pig. What more can you say about him, okay? So I do think this team is battling through, and we talked in the first segment about how maybe they feel a little bit galvanized now that Raffy is out of that clubhouse. But, hey, right now, last spot in the wild card goes to the Red Sox. All of a sudden, the American League East, JP, it looks like it could be. We could have a race here. It could be for the taking the way the Yankees have played lately. So I'm looking at this as a Giants team that I wouldn't be shocked if they knocked off the Dodgers. I wouldn't be shocked if you told me the Giants are in the World Series. So this is an elite team out in the National League that the Sox are going against. If they can take 2 out of 3 from the Giants, or dare I say sweep the Giants, or if they get swept, we'll learn a lot in this series. Or am I reading too much into it?
No, I think you're going against the iron, and if you look at the American League, the American League is a very blah league right now. I almost compare it to the NHL.
Yes.
There's a lot of teams that are all fighting for the same spot, and it fluctuates almost daily to weekly as to who's in the playoffs and who isn't in the playoffs. But, the Giants are conceivably one of the better teams in the National League. They got the best starting pitching. They got really good bullpen, and now they've added some bats to lengthen out their lineup. So I do think that this is a little bit of test against some iron, and to walk away with 2 out of 3 on the road, I think would be incredible. Their pitching has been really, really good, and they've gotten some timely hitting. So I'm really anxious to see how this series plays out for the Sox.
Are you concerned with the offense of the Red Sox? I mean, obviously you lose a generational bat. I know we're calling him top 10, but I think Raffy's bat is generational. You lose that. So sure, you don't have the sort of mental aspect and the distractions that he was causing, but boy, do you lose that production. Are you concerned in this series specifically? Because looking ahead, Abreu, Bregman, Yoshida, all these guys will come back eventually. Those are bats. And also, at the trade deadline, I mean, JP, you can speak to this more than me, but from the outside looking in, it always seems like there's a mercenary bat available at the deadline. It's harder to get arms. The Red Sox have the arms, I think, in terms of depth and pitching. Now it'll be about adding a bat at the deadline. But as it pertains to this series, are you concerned with the lack of production? I mean, look, they beat the Mariners 2 games out of 3, but they didn't have many hits. It wasn't an offensive juggernaut. They did it with pitching. They did it with defense. I don't know if that's going to work against the Giants. I think you need to be a little more balanced. Are you concerned about the offense?
I'm not that concerned because I think if they're getting the pitching, which has always been the question mark, the pitching is going to keep you in a lot of games. I mean, look at Seattle. Their offense is not really good, and they're hanging in there because of their starting pitching. But I think the one thing in the Red Sox favor is that Cora does a very good job with this. He can mix and match his lineup a little better now. Abreu's coming back, like you mentioned. Romy Gonzalez is having a really good year. He can go with a right-handed lineup against left-handed starters. He can go with a left-handed lineup against right-handed starters. So he's got a lot of flexibility. And listen, we're not going to sugarcoat the fact that you lost a middle-of-the-lineup bat, which most teams don't want to lose. But I think there's a lot of mix and match and platoon-type situations set up for Cora now, especially now that Campbell's going to be sent down, that they get an opportunity to put someone in that position that's a little bit more consistent right now and lengthen out the lineup. So I like the fact that they're building off their pitching and living off their pitching, because that's the hardest thing to get developed in this game.
Yeah, listen, you mentioned Campbell. We'll get into him later in the show in deeper detail. But Dobbins, Bello, Giolito, I mentioned Buehler. Is it sustainable? You know, I mean, all these guys pitching well at the same time. It just feels like when it happens, it feels special in the moment. But I just wonder if it's a fleeting kind of thing. It's just something that can be sustainable with these guys. Because so far, even though I liked what I've seen from Bello lately, earlier this season, JP, the guy couldn't get out of the fourth, fifth inning, for God's sakes. Now it seems as though he's figured it out. The only consistent I've seen is Garrett Crochet. Do you believe that these other starters, what they're doing, is sustainable?
Well, let's look at it from the top down. If you look at it from a positive standpoint, you have an absolute number one horse.
Yes.
Most teams in baseball don't have that number one horse. The nice thing about having the number one horse is you get into a 3 or 4 game losing streak and his turn comes up in the rotation, you got a pretty good chance of staying out of deep losing streaks. So you start with the horse. Giolito's been hot and cold. Buehler's been hot and cold. Bello's pitching really well. So you've got some guys that are kind of going through some rough spots, but the bullpen has bailed them out. So I think it's a matter of massaging starters 2, 3, 4, and 5 with the bullpen that's going to enable you to get deep into the season. I think one of the questions that we have to ask everybody in baseball is who has enough depth to handle the 162. And I look at, the Red Sox. I saw Richard Fitz the other night in Worcester. He threw the ball very well. So he's coming. They got a little bit more depth with him. The stock guy gives them depth. I think the Sox have enough depth outside of making a deal, but I do think they have the resources to make a deal because they're one of the only organizations in baseball that have as much potential depth in their minor leagues, more so than anybody else that I've seen. And that's going to be a position of strength. So they're in a really good situation. They're in a really good spot. And, they don't have to be Secretariat. They don't have to win by 31 lengths. All they got to do is win by a couple, and they're staying in the hunt right now.
JP, I like you more and more. I've been known to bet the ponies, so I appreciate the reference. Listen, I almost want to ask you like a philosophical question, because hearing you say that made me think. Okay, so you have the prospects where you could package something together, and I called him a mercenary, right? Go get a bat at the deadline or two to sort of help, quell what you lost in losing a Rafael Devers at the plate. But also, philosophically speaking, you could just hang on to these guys, right? And we already kind of see a youth movement here with Anthony up now, obviously, and Meyer playing well, and we believe Campbell will be back, and we'll get more into that later. You could sort of go either direction here, right? Philosophically as a franchise, playing for the future, hanging on to these prospects, developing them, or packaging them in the now and getting someone to help you right away. Am I reading it right?
No, well, they're in an enviable position. I mean, they're in a position most teams would love to be in.
Yeah. Meyer
and Anthony aren't going anywhere. But they do have a lot of guys below them that are very attractive to a lot of teams. I hope they don't get rid of the Garcia kid. I really, really like him. And I think the fact that he's a right-handed bat is going to tie in really nice with the youth movement that they got going. He's playing really, really well. I'd hate to see them get rid of him. He's a big chip. You would get something big for him. But I'd love to see him in a Red Sox uniform, because I think him, Anthony, and Meyer are going to be more of a thump than people think. And but they have some other ancillary pieces in the minor leagues. They're in a really good spot. They can do a lot of things and go a lot of different ways.
I want to get back to this series with the Giants. I know we were talking about Crochet. He's not pitching in the series, but just looking at his numbers, I can't even help myself, JP. I mean, this guy, 7-4, he should have a lot more wins, because a lot of those early starts, he was getting no run support. 7-4, but a 2.2 ERA. He is just absolute throwing gas. Before I ask you about the pitchers in this matchup this weekend, tell me, what do you see from this young man? Did you see it when he was with the White Sox? Like, what makes him special? I was at Fenway Fest with the fans before the season. He walked in to do an interview with TC, and I look up. I'm a tall guy, JP. I'm looking up at this dude. He's big. He looks like a middle linebacker. He's got the beard, the bald head. He looks like a Viking. This dude is an absolute tank, JP. What makes Garrett Crochet so special?
It's funny when I see him, I think of Game of Thrones. I think of Mag the Mighty,
Yes.
He looks like Mag the Mighty. He's just a big physical presence. And, man, I saw him at University of Tennessee, so I got a chance to see him as an amateur. And, I thought the White Sox, I thought they did him a disservice by putting him in the pen early. But I know they were trying to just protect his innings at the time. But what's not to like? The first thing that jumps out at me is he's a great competitor. So when your number one is that much of a competitor and doesn't want to come off the mound, man, the rest of the staff builds off that. He's got a power fastball, power breaking ball. He throws strikes. He competes. I mean, what's not to like? And when you can have that guy as your bellwether cow, that's man. I mean, we had DeGrom in New York, and everybody built off him. I had Halladay in Toronto. Everybody came off him. We had Hudson, Mulder, and Zito in Oakland. And before them, we had Dave Stewart. I mean, I've been around some number ones that were really just leaders in different ways. All of those guys are different kind of pitchers. But the one thing those guys had is what Crochet has. When he walks on the mound, everybody in that dugout says, we got a chance tonight.
All right, let's talk about this series and the pitchers we're going to see. Dobbins tonight, Bello, and then Giolito. What do you think matchup-wise? I mean, obviously, I think you got to get the best from all of them, but lately all of them have pitched really well, JP.
Well, and one thing to keep in mind, San Francisco is a great park to pitch in.
Yes.
It's a huge park to hit balls out of, especially at night. The fog still rolls in a little bit, not as bad as Candlestick, but it gets a little dense out there, and it's hard to hit the ball out. So I think that works in their favor. You can keep them to the big part of the park. It'll be a lot of outs, especially, we got a really good center fielder that can run them down like they got. So that's going to work in their favor, especially guys like Dobbins who throw a lot of changeups. Giolito throws a lot of changeups. So I think if these guys can keep these guys in the middle of the park and just pitch the way they've been pitching, they're going to be fine, because even a couple of mistakes, it's going to take a lot to hit a ball out in San Francisco.
Oh, JP, don't get me started. I could talk this whole podcast about growing up watching Barry Bonds hit absolute moon rockets to McCovey Cove.
That's a whole different animal, though. You're talking about a whole different guy. He was playing in a league that there's only a few guys that play in that league he was in.
Man, I haven't seen it since. I haven't seen a ball go out there in McCovey Cove since, and it was routine for Barry Bonds. By the way, that's another guy now, right, in the ear of a Rafael Devers. Isn't he a hitting coach around there? He's giving Rafael Devers tips on hitting. What could be worse? That's my worst nightmare come to life, JP.
Well, that's a pretty good guy to have in your corner, giving you a few tips. I think the nice thing about, you think about Ortiz, you think about all these really good hitters that are still around, so to speak. I think proven major league players will kind of huddle up with them in their own moment and say, hey, you see anything? I'm scuffling a little bit.
Yeah.
You got any ideas? Anything you see? And I think it goes a long way. And obviously having Barry Bonds there, who to me was arguably the greatest hitter who ever played, that's a pretty good resource to have. The only one problem I'll say is the game came so easy for those guys that the average human can't do what they did.
No doubt. All right, JP, we got a little trivia for you. Jackie from Maine called in and has a question directed at you. Remember, you can call us 617-790-0928. Listen to this, JP, and then we need your education.
Good morning. This is Jackie from Maine calling. What does OPS stand for? I see it on the baseball games all the time, OPS, on the stats. But I don't know what OPS stands for. Thank you very much.
There we go. Take it away, Professor.
That's a very good question. You know what? It took me a while to figure out OPS, too, so don't feel so bad about it. It's on base plus slugging. So what your slugging percentage is with what your on base percentage is, and they tie it together. What's considered a very good on base OPS is if you're in the 800s to 850, and Devers was really, really high. The really good hitters have 900. I'd say the average OPS in baseball is probably 725. And then you have to think about in correlation to what position you play. If you got a shortstop with an 800 OPS, you got a pretty good offensive player. If you got a shortstop with a 600 OPS, you got a pretty good defensive player, possibly with not as good offensive capabilities. So on base plus slugging. And you want to see it somewhere in the high 700s toward the 800s. Hope that answered your question.
It did. It definitely answered the question for sure. And we're going to continue to come to you, JP, for this guidance that you provide us, because when we come back, you're taking us behind the curtain at Polar Park. We'll talk Woo Sox next here on 310 to Left, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers, Travis, JP. We're talking ball. Come do it with us here on 310 to Left. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Alice from Quincy. I just wanted to say, listen, we're not pissed about the Devers trade. He needed to get out of here. What we're pissed about is the return that we got for Devers. Not enough. I just saw a report where they were asking a bunch of stuff, including Ozuna from the Braves. They go from asking way too much to getting basically a bag of balls, nothing in return for him instead out of San Francisco. It's just crazy. That's all. Thank you.
There we go. Welcome back to 310 to Left. JP, I don't think it was a bag of balls, but everyone around here was not thrilled with the return on the Rafael Devers trade. A bunch of arms, Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks, two pitchers. Obviously, Jose Bello, prospect there, and then they call him Mr. Tibbs, James Tibbs, who, great athlete, but also a prospect. Sort of break down the return on the Rafael Devers trade. I know the contract was a big part of it, the Giants taking the money, but just in terms of players, what do you think the Sox get here in these guys?
Well, I think they've got some serviceable pieces. I think Harrison is a guy with a big arm. Okay. I liked him when we traded for him. The drawback for me is he's got to be able to throw more strikes. He's got 300 minor league innings. He's got 150 walks in those innings, but he has close to 400 strikeouts. So it tells you he's got strikeout stuff. I think they're going to do some stuff with his delivery, tweak his backside. He's got a long takeaway on the backside, so his arm has to travel a long way through the zone. I think that's why he struggles with command, because his arm doesn't get to the consistent release point all the time. But he's definitely something to work with, and you can't sit there and say, this guy's a nothing. He's absolutely something. He's a potential starter down the road. If not, worst part, he goes to the bullpen. Hicks is a big bullpen piece. He's got a big arm. He's a failed starter, but he's a big arm to go with Chapman back at the end of the bullpen. He's a plus. Tibbs is a guy that really tore it up at Florida State, but he hasn't translated to pro ball so far. He wasn't hitting real well in high A. I was surprised they put him in double A, but they probably figure it's a need there. And he's a bat that you can potentially develop and keep coming on. I think he's a better hitter than he's played so far. And, Bello is just one of those kids that's a long way away and, just a future grab. So I don't think they got zero back. But you also have to understand when a team's taking on that kind of money, you're not really going to get their number 1 and 2 prospects. So I think they made the best out of what they could get. As far as what other teams were offering, I think the Red Sox saw a chance to get something of substance, get rid of the money, and not have to wait to see what other teams were going to come up with, because a lot of guys will tell you they're interested and then pull the rug out from you in the 11th hour. And I think they had a sure deal in hand, and they went with it.
If I'm a Sox fan, couldn't I argue that I should be cautiously optimistic in terms of developing some of these players that you're talking about? Because, listen, this farm system, as you said, one of the deepest in baseball, the Red Sox. They have done a great job of developing these guys, have they not, JP? So I hear you, Harrison needs work. Hicks, it just sounds like maybe he needs a reshuffling. He needs to just come out of the bullpen, and you're good with that. Tibbs, Bello, all these guys need to be developed. If I'm a Sox fan, from what I've seen so far, this franchise do with young talent, I should be cautiously optimistic that they can get these guys up to speed and develop to come help the big league club, right?
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think you're sitting here saying that, we've got Roman Anthony and Marcelo Mayo in return.
Right.
But you've got some serviceable guys that can help you and see if you can continue to develop them to get them over the hump on some of the areas that they've had a little bit of a problem with. They've got some things to work with, and they're proud of their development department, and they think they can do some things that can get these guys to the point where they're consistent contributors. And the nice thing is, outside of Hicks, who I think is going to get up to the big leagues as soon as he's healthy, the other guys don't have to be in the big league picture this year.
Is there anyone else in the farm system right now that if we don't know about, we should? Do you have your eye? Is your radar perking up for some guys we should know about coming down the pike?
Well, we live in a day and age where everybody knows about everybody. So there's very few secrets. But the kid Arias is going to be a very good player, the shortstop. And he's a couple of years away, I would say, which creates another interesting problem for the Red Sox, but a good problem to have. And I know I mentioned it earlier, but I am a big fan of Garcia. They call him the password. I like to call him the eye chart. But this kid's going to be a good player. Boy, he's made some really good strides, especially with 2 strikes on him. He's hitting the ball the other way. His first 2 swings and at-bats, he's looking to do heavy, heavy damage. He runs well. He plays a good outfield. I like him because he's got a little style to him. He's a little bit of a character in the sense that he plays with some flair, but he plays really hard. And when you look at how many left-handed bats the Red Sox have, this kid's a nice compliment from the right side. So he's the guy I think is not getting the attention the other guys have gotten, but is well deserving of it.
I mean, you mentioned, it's going to take some of these guys a couple years. Yeah. Is there anyone who can help now, right away? I know we'll get into Campbell later. He obviously was on the roster and they sent him back down. But do you think there's guys right now that we should have our eye on that could come up and help this season or in the short term?
Well, I think what the Red Sox have done a really good job of is signing 6-year free agents and acquiring players that can help them in periods of time. And I think that they've built a really good group of critical mass players. I think of Sogard. He can come up and help you for a month. He's a big league player. Toro has been outstanding. That was a great sign. And he's done yeoman's work at that big league level. You think of just some of those guys that end up coming up and being contributing players. They have a bunch of those guys in AAA. And, Ryan Thompson's played really well in AAA. And I'm missing a few guys here and there, but the Stock kid, the Campbell kid could come up and help you out of the pen. So there's a bunch of serviceable guys in AAA. The one star is Garcia. That's the one guy I see as being like a prospect in the line of the Myers and the Anthonys. The other guys are all serviceable guys that can help you for a month, 2 months, and maybe a little bit longer. And Eaton's just come up there. Eaton's a very good player. He can do a lot of things to help a club. So I think their parts really help them out a lot.
Was there a player along the way? We started this whole 310 Left. I was fascinated with your resume, and I asked a ton of questions off the top, but I have about 1,000 left that I want to ask. And one of them is, is there a guy or two along the way that you whiffed on and you thought, it's not going to work out, and he ended up being a star, or vice versa? Maybe 1 or 2 guys that you thought, this is the next guy, and it kind of fizzled out for whatever reason as you sort of look back on your storied career.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, anybody in baseball, it's the old saying, I'll show you my mistakes. I won't show you my mistakes if you don't show me your mistakes.
Right.
And I remember one time we were in a pennant race in Oakland, and we needed another pitcher, and Ariel Prieto had left Cuba. And he was now a free agent. So we flew, Billy Beane, myself, and Sandy Alderson, we flew to Palm Springs to watch him pitch. And he was as advanced a pitcher that you could have seen. A guy that we felt could jump right into rotation. So the guy we passed on to take Ariel Prieto is a guy by the name of Todd Helton.
Oh.
So that's a pretty good miss.
Wow.
Yep. So we instead of having the hindsight of thinking long term,
wow,
we had a short term viewpoint, and we went for the guy who could help. Now, keep in mind, this was right in the time when we were on a run between 88 to 92 in that area. We were going to playoff, and we wanted to continue to go to playoffs. But in hindsight, it was very short-sighted of us, and we all made a mistake on that one.
Oh, man, the one who got away. It happens. It happens. I want to ask you about some financials here, because I've heard you mention a few times how big of a deal that it is the Giants took that entire contract. But now, for the Red Sox end of things, look, if I'm an agent, I'm on the phone immediately. Jaron Duran, show me my money. How about this young core, these young guys? I know Kristian Campbell got paid, and we'll talk about him coming up, but, can Meyer, can Anthony, do you start talking numbers now with these dudes? In other words, the money's off the books for the Sox. Do you think that'll be reallocated to keeping some guys in-house, or you get to the offseason and you figure it out? Sort of take me through behind the curtain as it pertains to the financials of Rafael Devers coming off the books for the Sox and the flexibility it gives them.
Yeah, well, obviously there's more money in the purse, right? So there's more things you can do. I wouldn't be in a hurry to go to Anthony and Meyer right now. I don't think you have to.
Okay.
If they want to do it as a good faith, I get it. But it also comes down to who their agents are. If their agent is Scott Boras, they're never going to get a deal like that done.
Right.
So it's going to have to be an agent that is very aware of maybe where the player is and what the player is looking at. But if it's a big agent, I would doubt that they're going to get a long-term deal done. But there's no need to rush into it. You control the players for over 6 years, and you'll have a better chance of seeing how they play out. But, they went out, they got Crochet, they did a deal with Crochet, they spent money on Bregman, even though it was 1 year, but I'm sure they're willing to go deeper on Bregman. So there's definitely money there. I think this group is going to be a little bit more, I wouldn't say cheap, I would say a little bit more well thought of. How they're going to spend their money, but there's definitely money there, and I think the Red Sox have shown that they'll spend the money. It may not be as freely as GMs in the past, but I think when they need to step up, they will step up.
Hey, they were right in it to the end with the Juan Soto sweepstakes, and then, the Mets gave them all the money in the world, and it's like, okay, we're out, so I get it, but props to the Red Sox for that. How about the trade pieces you get in return for this Rafi trade? We've been talking about sort of the timeline of how we think these guys could start contributing. But my question is there pressure on all these players who came over in this trade? Because they hear it. I mean, you heard the voicemail. Literally, people are like, oh, you traded Rafi for a bag of balls, a Code Red Mountain Dew, and some Cape Cod chips. These players have to hear this, right? And that is that putting extra pressure on them, you think, JP?
I don't think so, but we live in a day and age, and especially if anybody's from New England, I mean, whatever sport it is, they're passionate and they're rabid, and I don't think more than any team than the Red Sox. So, they're definitely going to know that people know who they. I mean, it's amazing to me when I see these guys in the minor leagues, how famous they already are as compared to 10, 15 years ago when very few people knew who these players were. But I don't think there's any pressure on. Hicks is a big leaguer, and Harrison has touched the big leagues. So they both have touched the big leagues. But the younger kids, I don't think they're going to feel any pressure with this.
All right, JP, little backstory here. I was calling Kristian Campbell, Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony, the new holy trinity of Boston baseball. And now there's a slight delay from the Kristian Campbell aspect. We'll talk about it next when 310 to Left returns, brought to you by your New England Ford dealers. Travis, JP, roll with us. We're talking ball and partying on a Feel Good Friday. We'll be right back. 310 to Left, here it is. This from Bleacher Report walk-off. The Red Sox are sending Kristian Campbell to Triple-A per Jeff Passan. Let's get JP's take on this. I wasn't really shocked. I'm curious as how you felt by it. I mean, the bat just wasn't working out. And obviously, second base never really materialized. We talked about a lot of guys coming back from injury, so I think at DH you kind of have a log jam there. It made sense to me to send him back down. And he strikes me as a kind of guy, and he does have some job security here too, JP. He has a contract, so a very handsome one. So he strikes me as the kind of guy whose confidence isn't going to take a hit from this. I actually think this is a good thing. Send him back down, get the game back on track, and at some point he's going to come back up, right?
Yeah, I mean, the kid only played 18 or 19 games in AAA. He really got rushed to the major leagues, in my opinion. I got to see him in AAA last year play a bunch. I thought there was some questions about a few things in his game that I did not think he was ready for the big leagues, but that was just my own personal evaluation. I think he's going to be a good player. I think he needs to come back down, get his swing back together. His swing has gotten very big at the major league level. He's chasing a lot of balls, and that comes with panic. When you're a young player and you get to the big leagues, your head is swimming. And then on top of it, you're asked to play different positions. There's a lot that they threw on this kid's plate. And I don't think it was very fair to him as a player, but they obviously thought that he could handle it. I think this is going to be a really good reset for him. I think he'll get a chance to come down, get his feet on the ground, maybe stop thinking so much and just go back to being the player that he was before, where he just reacted. And he's going to be fine. It's, even Mike Trout got sent back down. But if you think about it, there's very few Ken Griffey Jr.'s and Barry Bonds that come to the big leagues and just take off. There's always that, and, you know, Meyer's going through it a little bit. Roman Anthony's going through it. Everybody goes through it. The big leagues is a tough place to play, and it's an even tougher place to learn on the job. So, I understand they felt this was the right move to put him in the big leagues early, and he played well in April, and he had a tough May, and, it continued into June. But he's still going to be a good player. He just needs to hit the reset button.
Yeah, reset will be good for him. Can you take us behind the curtain of what you saw? Because give us some strengths and weaknesses here. You said you spotted some things that he needs to work on to stick at the big league level. So tell us about those, and then tell us some things that he does well that you think will bode well once he comes back up to staying.
So the great thing about being on TV now is I get to be a scout, but to talk about it.
Yes.
So basically, I'm still evaluating the games. And I look at Campbell. I thought he had a very aggressive swing that you could expose with off-speed stuff.
Okay.
Thought he did not hit the ball to right field enough for a young player. That I thought he was pull happy, and I don't know if that was just a byproduct of what his swing was. I thought he struggled on balls on the outer half, and he was going to have to really learn to hit the ball the other way to be a complete hitter. And he was selling out for pull contact and pull power. So that was the one thing that jumped out at me at offensively. And I think defensively, he's athletic, but I'm not so sure it's middle infield athleticism. So I think his best position is, believe it or not, I think he's either going to be a third baseman or an outfielder. There's a lot of things up the middle that you can get away with some instincts and some first step quickness. And I don't know if he has those all together. I think what he gets to, he catches well. I think he's a very bright kid and a very bright player that will figure all of this out. But he got kind of thrown into it. It's like sticking your head in a wash machine. It's just spinning around. You can't stop it.
Yeah.
So in fairness to the kid, I think he got a lot of things thrown at him. But I like him. I like him. I just think he's just got to go through a little bit more maturation.
JP, I stuck my head in the washing machine a ton as a kid, and I ain't been right since.
Get in line.
No wonder we get along so good, you and I. Look, we got about 5 minutes here left. Let's switch gears back to the Giants, and let's get some gut feels here on how this thing's going to play out. I like the way the Sox are playing lately. The offense worries me a bit. The bats could go cold here. Birdsong's tough. I think tonight will be tough for Dobbins. I like Bello. I like Giolito. I'm going to go another series win here. It's a little bold. Obviously, the Giants, one of the top teams in the NL, they have bigger fish to fry. I mean, they're trying to go after the Dodgers here. But I do think momentum matters. I'm going to go Sox, a galvanized group. Hey, JP, I see a world in which Raffy puts up numbers. He wants revenge. He'll probably ball against the Sox and still lose. I'm going to take the Sox here, 2 out of 3 from the Giants. What's your gut feel in this series?
I think the Giants win the series. They're coming off losing 2 out of 3 to the Guardians. They play well at home for the most part. I think their pitching matches up a little better than the Red Sox.
Yep.
I want to point out one thing with the Red Sox. If you look at the standings in the wild card, I love their position because everybody below them is a very mid to small market team.
Yep.
They don't have the resources to go out and do some things. Even if the Red Sox lose 2 out of 3 in the series, I don't think this is like, oh my God, the season's over. That's right. This is just the series. But I look at the standings where the Red Sox are. I like where they're at. I see them being a wild card team because they have the resources to go out and get other guys, and they're getting some guys back.
JP, I completely agree. In fact, I'll take it a step further. I mean, with this playoff format in baseball, the wild card teams are the ones you fear. No one would want to see the Red Sox come into their building as a wild card team. I love seeing the Yankees suffer, but at the end of the day, these results the last few years with these division winners in these damn series, it doesn't bode well. So you know what? Whoever wins,
I wish it was like this when I was a GM. I would have made the playoffs a bunch of times. But I'm just looking at the standings here. Seattle, Cleveland, Minnesota, Kansas City. Those are the teams behind the Red Sox.
Yes.
They don't scare me. They don't scare me, especially from a financial situation and from resources. So I like the spot that they're in.
I do too. And look, the NL, those are the heavyweights, okay? Yeah. It is top heavy. I think the AL might be a little deeper, but it's more wide open in the American League. So why not? If a Red Sox team can get hot and get in, JP, it's not this like make-believe land where they could get hot and go on a deep playoff run, right?
I got them in the playoffs. I think
Me
they're going to
too.
be a playoff team. And I'll tell you another thing. I know the guy's taking a lot of heat. They got a good manager. Cora's a good manager.
That's right.
And, that shows up when you get into those tight games.
Yeah, I also think he can create that sort of us against the world mentality. Like the Rappy thing, although I didn't love the return, I didn't love the timing in which you did trade him. I do think that works to Cora's advantage, JP, of creating an us against the world underdog type vibe. Does that make sense?
I do, and I think the one thing the Red Sox, I think people have to look at the Red Sox in this vein now. There's a lot of pieces that make up the team that are movable, and it's a flexible lineup. It's a flexible rotation. So there's a lot of things for Cora to play with here, and I think that's going to work in their favor with the depth.
He's playing chess, not checkers. JP and Travis, that's it for us here on 310 to Left. Brought to you by your local New England Ford dealers and F-Series, America's best-selling truck for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. Enjoy the series against the Giants, everyone. We'll see you next time. Let's go Sox.